Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this Blake virtual event, Why an Independent School and Why Blake. My name is Joe Silvestri. I am Blake's Director of Admissions and Financial Assistance. It is so awesome to have so many families on board for this really interesting presentation about independent schools in Blake. I am lucky to be joined here today by a colleague, Ann Graybeal, our Associate Head of School, and three terrific parents. I'll ask all of them to introduce themselves to you now. Let's start with Ann. Please say hello to our guests.
Hello, everybody. Ann Graybeal.
Great. And now I'd like our parents to say hello, maybe in the order. They're listed on screen here, Vicky, then Mara, then Tasha. So parents, please say hello, introduce yourselves, the age of your children at Blake, how long you've been a Blake parent maybe, and it might be helpful to hear what town you live in. So Vicky, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Vicki Bennett. I have three children at Blake. I have my son, Graham, who started in kindergarten, and he's now in 7th grade. And then I have a 5th and a 3rd grader who both started at pre-K, and we live in Minneapolis.
Hi, my name's Mara Rendy, and I have a junior at Blake. And we have been at Blake for 3 years. We moved from Seattle 3 years or 2.5 years ago, and he's been at Blake starting in 9th grade.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tasha Walvig, and I have a 1st grader at Blake. She started in kindergarten, so we've been Blake parents for 1.5 years now, and we love it. And we live in North Minneapolis.
Great. Thank you all. Let me move the presentation along. So I want to offer families an outline of what we have planned for you today. So we just did introductions, of course. This session is scheduled to go from 4 to 5 p.m. and we will take up to an hour perhaps. It'll be filled with some presentation, some stories, and lots of questions and answers. We may end before 5 o'clock. It really depends on how many questions come from attendees, but we'll be sure to close up shop by 5 o'clock so that you can get on with the rest of your day. So I'm going to offer an overview in just a minute, a quick overview of Blake for families who may not be as familiar with us as others are. And then Ann is going to offer an awesome overview of what it means to be an independent school. And then we'll, as you can see here, we'll hear from more from our three parents. And I'd like them to talk about, when they were thinking about schools for their children, why they ended up seeing an independent school as a great fit for their family, and why in particular they chose Blake. And then, as I noted, we'll finish up with questions and answers. So again, to start, I want to offer just a brief overview of Blake. Many families have come to other virtual events and know us well. Other families today with us are new to exploring Blake, so I want to take just a couple of minutes to offer this overview. So Blake, of course, has a strong and well-regarded reputation in the Twin Cities of offering an excellent and well-rounded education grounded in shared values of respect, integrity, courage, love of learning, and a commitment to pluralism. We work really hard every day to live out those values here at Blake. Blake, I think, certainly has a reputation, first and foremost, as having an awesome and excellent academic program. But I don't want folks to overlook the fact that we have a broad and inclusive program in the arts, in athletics, and in activities outside of class. Blake is a somewhat large school by independent school standards. So we have this year 1,353 students in grades pre-K to 12, so over 14 grades. And those students are served by 350 faculty and staff. Blake is unusual a little bit because we're not all housed in the same building from pre-K to 12. We actually have 3 campuses. Our campus in Wayzata is a lower school for grades pre-K to 5. We also have a lower school, grades pre-K to 5, on our campus in Hopkins. That lower school shares the Hopkins campus with a middle school for grades 6 through 8. And then our upper school for grades 9 through 12 is in the Kenwood neighborhood of Minneapolis. So there are many Blake students who spend time at all 3 of our campuses. They start at Wayzata, go to Hopkins for middle school, and then Minneapolis for upper school. Other students spend their lower and middle school years in Hopkins and then go to Minneapolis for upper school. So a little bit unusual, as I said, to have 3 campuses, but we think it offers our students a really terrific experience for social emotional growth. As I said, Blake is a somewhat large school by independent school standards, but each of our campuses and divisions really functions as a small school community. So in our lower school, each campus has about 250 students. In our middle school, we house about 330 students. In our upper school, give or take, about 500 students. So that all adds up to about 1,350 students. Blake is, we pride ourselves on being a diverse school community in lots of different ways that you can define diversity. In terms of geography, we attract this year students from more than 60 cities and towns. More than 38% of our students self-identify as students of color. We pride ourselves in being a school that is diverse in terms of socioeconomics. About a quarter of our students receive need-based financial aid, financial assistance to attend. And of course, we value all different thoughts and perspectives as one of the measures of our diversity. Blake certainly stands out in terms of having an exceptional faculty who get to teach small classes, so our students are well known in a warm and caring school community. And small classes, lots of parents want some specifics on that. So our class size in lower school is about 19. Class size average in middle and upper school are 16 students. And finally, we do have a selective admission process. We work hard at getting to know all of the students who apply to be part of Blake. We really want to make sure that Blake is a good fit for all the students that we offer admission to. And we talk about diversity, as I noted before, Blake students are diverse in so many ways, which makes us an awesome school community. But the one thing they all share in common, or the things they share in common rather, are all of our students, they're bright, they like to learn, they want to be engaged in the learning process, they're engaged in school life, they're curious, they're kind and polite. So that is what, when families ask, what are you looking for in students? That really is a good summary right there. Okay, now I'm gonna turn the program over to Ann Graybeal, who's gonna offer thoughts about what it means to be an independent school. We know that parents have lots of choices when thinking about school fit for their child and their family. There are public schools, charter schools, magnet schools, parochial schools. But many may not be familiar with the term independent school and what it means to be an independent school. So Ann is going to walk us through that. So Ann, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be able to be here today. Independent schools have been part of my life, personally and professionally, since kindergarten. And while I think of myself as an English teacher first, I'm very happy that my current role as associate head of school gives me the opportunity to share a little bit more about independent schools and what makes them such meaningful and positive influences in students' lives. So there are 6 key factors sort of in that identity that I'll talk about today. And the first has to do with governance. Blake is governed by a board of trustees with programmatic and operational decisions made by school personnel. And that means that there is no state oversight of curriculum, program, or finances. That said, the absence of state oversight in our operations does not mean that we are a rogue institution by any means. We are accredited through the Independent Schools Association of the Central States, through which we participate in a cyclical 7-year process to ensure that we are operating in line with best practices in independent schools nationally in terms of curriculum, operations, and finances. We are also a very active member of the Minnesota Association for Independent Schools and the National Association for Independent Schools. And these 3 organizations, ISACS, MAIS, and NACE, are essential for us in conducting research into independent school program and practice, offering benchmarking resources, and creating professional development opportunities for faculty and administrators. The next key identifier for us is our financial model. As an independent school, Blake is a not-for-profit organization, and our greatest expenses are employee salaries and benefits. And we meet those expenses not only through tuition, but also through contributions, operational revenue from programs such as extended day, transportation, and spring and summer camps. Fundamentally, we are guided at Blake by our mission, commitment to pluralism, and our core values. And whether we are designing curriculum or evolving student programs or making decisions about school policy and school practice, we use our mission and values as our lodestar in establishing priorities, creating strategic plans, and then operationalizing them. As an independent school, we also have incredible freedom and flexibility when it comes to hiring. 70% of our faculty have advanced degrees, so master's and doctoral degrees. 28% of our faculty maintain teaching certification, which we support them in doing, but we do not require. And the fact that Blake is not required to hire teachers with formal state certification means that we can find faculty who have, deep kind of passion and expertise for their subject matter, but happen to not have formal education training. They may, however, have a real educator's orientation, just based on their own educational experience or based on their practice in other fields. We have faculty who have been museum educators, faculty who have been college professors, attorneys, practicing artists. And I think what's most powerful about that is that this means that we have faculty across all three divisions at Blake who, in addition to their work here, continue to be practitioners of the disciplines that they love and that brought them to education in the first place. So we have faculty who are working and exhibiting artists. We have published authors. We have folks who are active software and game designers in their spare time. And we have several faculty members who teach at the college level during summer. As an independent school, Blake has tremendous freedom and flexibility in our curriculum design. Once again, we design curriculum that aligns with our mission and our commitment to pluralism and our core values. We stay up to date with current educational research. For example, our literacy program in the lower and middle school has been driven by a long-standing relationship with Columbia University's Teachers College. And our math program has been driven by research and professional development done through the Graduate School of Education at Stanford University. We collaborate with leading independent schools around the country and around the world to identify and implement best practices for teaching and learning. And we also, and I would say most importantly, have real substantial faculty involvement in curriculum design. Research tells us that teachers are most effective and that students learn best when teachers are teaching what they love. So this doesn't mean that every single faculty member has, free choice about their own course in their own classroom. We have wonderful systems of grade level coordination and pre-K-12 department chairs to make sure that we have an intentional sequenced and spiraled curriculum across the 14 grades. But there is faculty voice in that process. And that means that what happens in the classroom is part and parcel of our faculty's own vision for what the best teaching and learning looks like in their discipline. Finally, we do not use, as an independent school, state tests to assess student performance. Our lower and middle school students take the CPT-5, which is a verbal and quantitative reasoning standardized test. And our upper school students take the PSAT, the SAT, the ACT, a number of AP tests. And we also use additional benchmarking assessments in phonics, math, and modern languages across the 14 grades. So we study the results of these assessments to inform our curriculum design, but none of these assessments determines that design for us. Finally, the real heart of an independent school, in my own experience as a student, as a teacher, as an administrator, is the community and connection that arises from our model. We create opportunities for students to engage, not just across a number of academic opportunities, but also co-curricular opportunities. Because the school is relatively small, it means that students have the opportunity to engage in co-curriculars from athletics to theater to debate without having to feel as though they need to dedicate all of their time and attention to just one pursuit. As Joe mentioned, we are really proud of our small class sizes and also of our advisory groups and affinity groups. When I think about Blake, I think about sort of a series of nets around every student, teachers, advisors, counselors, learning specialists who really keep their eyes on every individual student and ensure that nobody is falling through the cracks and that all of our students have opportunities to engage in experiences that are meaningful to them, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And that student support is just part and parcel of our identity and of our daily work. And finally, I would say that we have tremendously close and collaborative relationships among students, parents and guardians, and faculty. Blake is really characterized by the partnership that exists among these groups and characterized by the fact that we are all here with the goal first and foremost to support our student experience. So with all of these sort of layers and perspectives of adult support and student engagement, we're able to create a really sort of warm and intimate community, again, across all of our 3 divisions and 14 grades.
Okay, Anne, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that presentation. I'd never heard you use that metaphor about having a series of nets around our students, but I think it's a really apt way to describe the Blake experience for our students from pre-K to 12. Before I see we have one question offered already. Before we get to questions and answers, I want to ask our parents on the panel to talk a little bit more about that question I brought up earlier. Think back to, for Tasha, maybe it was just 2 years ago when you were looking at schools for Mara and Vicki. Before that, when you were thinking about what schools were the best fit for your family and for your child or children. Maybe you could tell a story about how you came to think of independent schools in general as a great fit, and then Blake more specifically. So let's start backwards with the mom who went through that process just a couple of years ago. So Tasha, can you talk about how you and Steve came to explore schools for Tabitha and how you ended up in kindergarten at Blake?
Yes, absolutely. Tabitha went to preschool at a nature immersion school called the Forest School of Minnesota. And she was outside all the time with when she first started, there were 3 other children. And by the time she finished, there were 10 total, including her. And we were looking for a school that would offer a small class size and also individual attention. And she's also a very social person. So we wanted to make sure that there was a lot of emphasis on social interaction and empathy, which were skills that she learned in the preschool that she attended. So when we started looking at schools in kindergarten, it was a bit daunting because Minneapolis has a lot of options and it's kind of an overwhelming process. And we didn't really want to send her to public school in Minneapolis, given the options that we had based on where we live. And so we applied for open enrollment in Minnetonka, and we also did the lottery in Minneapolis, and then we looked at Blake. And I think one of the things that drew us to Blake in the first place was a high recommendation from her forest school teacher, whose two daughters attended upper school and graduated from Blake, and she highly recommended it. So we went on a tour and we loved it and hoped that Tabitha would get in. And so one of the things too that we really appreciated about Blake was almost the initial sense of community. Like we live in North Minneapolis. A lot of the families who attend Blake live in suburbs or wealthier parts of Minneapolis, but I feel like we were welcomed, and that meant a lot. And Tabitha really made friends right away in all the admissions events that we attended. And I realize things are a lot different this year because nobody can do these things in person, and it's harder to get a sense of the community that Blake offers. But we have found that since we started Blake, the parent connections are great and people are really welcoming. And we've made a lot of really good family friends and are really excited about the curriculum. Tabitha's doing unusually well with remote learning, given her personality. Kindergarten was a little rough because she wasn't expecting it, but she's doing great in first grade and is excited to attend school every day in our house. But she goes back January 4th and is really excited about that too. So I think Blake does an incredible job pulling together academics and social skills and building community within the classroom.
Thanks, Tasha. Really terrific. So folks, thank you for submitting questions. We will get to all of them, I promise. I want to hear from Mara now about moving from the West Coast, exploring schools in the Twin Cities, and again, how she ended up choosing Blake.
Hi, so sorry, I'm having a little computer issue. Yeah, so we moved from Seattle 2.5 years ago, where we were also at an independent school out there. And so we sort of had some familiarity with independent schools, looked at Blake and looked at a few other schools in the Twin Cities. But really, my kids and I and my husband all fell in love with Blake almost immediately. We just really liked the strong academics. And then in addition, all of the other stuff that comes with that what they were talking about, that we were talking about, like the arts and the athletic program and all of that, because it's such a critical part of your kid's life is what they're doing. And I just love that, to watch my junior's super into photography and he plays 3 sports at Blake, and he's just been able to really integrate in the whole community. But in terms of moving here, I have to say everybody welcomed us with open arms and instantly felt like we became part of a real community. And, I know one thing my son was worried about was coming in at freshman year. All these kids have been going together to school since pre-K. What would that be like? And what he discovered is that the kids that had all been going to school together since pre-K really were very tight and loved each other, but they were so excited to have new faces that that was really a cool experience for him. And I mean, really the bottom line why we chose Blake is I feel like, they really focus on higher order thinking, critical thinking, being able to read and write. And those are, difficult skills to acquire, I think. And I just see it playing out in my son, that he's just becoming really a thoughtful citizen.
Great, thank you, Mara. And so Vicki, you are the veteran parent on the panel. Think way back to when you were making the choice for your oldest child, and tell us about sort of other options that you considered and how you ended up thinking that Blake was the best fit.
Sure. So we were also a family that relocated. And when we came here, one of the things we heard is that the public schools are also wonderful, many of them. So we knew that if we looked at any of the independent schools, that they would be working very hard to justify the cost when you can just as easily go to some of the public schools here. What was very important for us and why we chose Blake, there were a number of reasons. One of them was we wanted diversity. And however you define that, we wanted to see it. And one of the things I really love that Dr. Stavney has done is she makes sure that diversity starts as early as pre-K. I know some independent schools, for example, when you look at financial aid, they heavily focus on high school or middle school, but it starts as early as pre-K. And I think that's a great thing when you look at schools and you're looking for diversity. And then the other thing that was really important to us were the core values. They really do honestly mirror what is important in our home, which is welcome, safety, and respect. We wanted to not only feel that at the school that we were at, but we also wanted to make sure that it was being taught to our children. And I can honestly say that even through the staff, we feel that. And I've spoken to a couple of teachers who were new, who also said that's the reason why they were thrilled to be working at Blake, is because they do feel that welcome, safety, and respect. And I'll just add one other thing now that I have a middle schooler. It continues on, it changes, both in terms of the diversity, the profile changes, new kids come in, but also the welcome, safety, and respect. It becomes a little bit more of a mature mantra, but it's there, and it's also in the high school.
All right, terrific. Thank you all to our parents for sharing those stories. So at these events, we always bring with us several questions to sort of prime the pump in case we don't have any from our attendees, but I am so excited to have already at least half a dozen questions. So I will, some are about admissions, some are about the curriculum, and others. So let me start. Maybe Dr. Graybeal is best positioned to answer this one. A mom asks about how Blake students are able to participate in the UmpTY math program at the U and also manage the Blake curriculum.
It's a terrific question. We have a number of students who have participated in UmpTY over the years. And we also have a number of faculty who have taught with that program at the University of Minnesota. So our math faculty know it well. So we absolutely support students in continuing their work with UmpTY. And we also believe that Blake's math curriculum has a philosophy that is about breadth and depth, not only sequential learning. So we see the work that students are doing at school, particularly in the upper school in math, as being complementary to UmpTY. And students have spent all 4 years in upper school working in both programs with real success.
All right, thank you, Anne. This next question is really an admissions question. It's about the acceptance rate in 9th grade. Of course, earlier in my presentation, in my introduction, I talked about Blake being a selective school, and it is. So our admission rate, it varies from year to year, depending on a couple of factors. How many spaces we have available in 9th grade, and that, of course, is subject to the size of our 8th grade. And then also, what is the size of our applicant pool? In the end, we know that we can offer space, or we have space for between 20 and 25 new students in 9th grade. Typically, we'll have applicants from 70, 80, 90 students a year. So families can do the math. Typically, we're offering admission to maybe 35 students to fill those 25 spaces, because we know that not every student will say yes to us. You know, great kids tend to have lots of good choices for high school. So we tend to offer admission to maybe 35 students a year. And so admission rate in upper school tends to be about 50%. Again, it varies from year to year, but that's a good round number to think about. In the end, if your child is sort of fits the description that I spoke of earlier, a student who has done well academically, and that doesn't mean straight A's. We're not enrolling just students in the top 5%, but a student who's got a good academic track record, who likes school, who wants to be in a small school environment, who wants to be engaged in his or her learning. You know, if that describes your student, you know, in addition to being, you know, well behaved, of course, then he or she stands a good chance of being offered admission. Next question, again, I think is for Dr. Graybeal. It asks about support and resources for students who might be considered gifted or are in accelerated programs in lower or middle school. So this is a common admission question. So how do we help support students who are exceptional in one or more areas academically? And can you hear us? I think you're still on mute.
I'm so sorry. The motto of 2020, you're still on mute. So it's a terrific question. I would start again with the fact of our really small class sizes and with our very robust student support system as well. Our learning specialists support not only students with diagnosed learning differences, but also students who are twice exceptional and who are gifted in some areas of their academic life. So we have a really flexible literacy program in which we regularly benchmark students, understand their reading level, and then support them in the classroom with both the classroom library and the divisional library, particularly in lower school with books that match their reading level. And we also take care to distinguish between sort of what text that a student is able to read and text that a student is able to understand and kind of interpret and talk about in a meaningful way. And there is a difference between those two. We have a support program for students who require sort of additional extension and challenge in their math learning in lower school. And in middle school, we have both in math and modern and classical languages, a significant number of leveled opportunities for students to pursue those disciplines, you know, at a degree that matches sort of their current skills, knowledge, and habits of mind. In classes like English and social studies in the middle school, once again, we're meeting students where they are. And if we see a student with a particularly high level of expertise or interest in one of those disciplines, we're working with them through tutorial, through extra help, to identify projects and opportunities for them to really deepen and expand their skill set there.
Thank you, Anne.
If I can just add from a parent
Sure.
perspective, I hope you don't mind, Joe, but it's one of the things I really do love about Blake in the lower school. You can walk through the halls and you will see children working with specialists, and you really have no idea why these children are working with them. It can be, it's all about meeting the child, as Anne just said, you know, where they are. So when you're walking through the halls and you see a child who is in the hallway because they're ahead where the rest of the class is, or they're you know, just working to get there, there's no stigma. There's no stigma associated with being out in the hallway. Kids don't know, kids don't care, and it's totally normal. And I see it in the middle school as well, where children can ask for extra work and it's happily given to the children. And there are plenty of opportunities for the teachers and the kids to get together, even now as we're remote. I'm still seeing a lot of that. My children are working with specialists and they're remote.
Thank you, Vicki. So again, lots of questions. We're going to try to get to as many as possible. I'm going to ask publicly the ones that I think have broadest interest, and we may be following up with several of you. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up tomorrow to answer personally. So maybe this is a question that parents can ask. Vicki, you're probably in best position since you've been at Blake the longest. Can you talk about interaction between students on the various campuses and the work that goes on to create a whole school community pre-K to 12? There's a secondary question about which campus students are assigned to for lower school that I'll answer at the end. So, and Anne, you're welcome to join in too, and certainly other parents if they have a perspective they want to share about sort of the efforts at Blake to build a school community when you have 3 campuses of students.
Sure. I would say the most profound thing is Legacy Day. So once a year, the children get together specifically to give back to the community. And so it's all of the grades from all of the campuses. Every year it's the same group of children who get together. So my kids are always looking forward to seeing the older kids that they don't typically see throughout the school year on a regular basis. So that's a wonderful opportunity for the three campuses to get together. On the lower school, from the two campuses, there are many, many times throughout the school year that the two classes will get together. There will be a field trip where one campus meets with the other. And then there's also the transition into middle school. It really starts in 4th grade, where there is a camping trip, Camp Widgie, where the two classes get together for a few days on a camping trip. Those are a few that I remember.
Anne, can you think of anything that you might share in that regard? Certainly community events where we bring the whole school community together are important. Plays, performances, athletic events where the entire school community is invited and shares that experience. I know this year, or maybe every year, 4th grade go up and do a lesson with our physics students in the upper school.
So we regularly have lower school students visiting the upper school, not just for science lessons, but also for art as well. In addition to the, so not just the sort of internal divisional connections between students like the K and 5 buddy program, we have connections across disciplines. I would also sort of flag our bear-to-bear tutoring program, in which upper school students are matched with younger students to support them in their academic work. And many of the service learning opportunities that we support PK-12 involve students from multiple divisions as well.
Great, and thank you, Anne and Vicki. Let me answer that final piece about campus placement for lower school. As families might know, families don't apply to a specific campus for lower school. They simply apply to the lower school. But as part of the admission process, we certainly ask that question at least once, sometimes several times: which campus do you prefer? And we're almost always able, certainly at entry point years, pre-K and K, to offer family space at the campus they prefer. Frankly, most times families prefer a campus that's closest geographically, what will make their life easiest in terms of day-to-day getting their child to school. It's sometimes more challenging in non-entry points, grades 1 through 5, if there's only space available at one or the other campus, that's where the campus placement will be. But almost always we're working hard to make sure families are placed at the campus they prefer. It's a question here about the transition to Blake from local public school. I'm sorry, I don't think we have any parents on the panel that actually made that transition from public school to Blake. But I can certainly speak to that perspective, just having worked with families over the years. As Mara said, certainly at entry points where we're bringing in lots of new students. So in 6th grade, we're adding 25 students. In 9th grade, we're adding 20 to 25 students. Our current students, as she mentioned, really are excited and welcome new students. It's such a small school that an influx of 20 new faces is exciting. The biggest transition, I think, every student is different, but tends to be the size of Blake and what that means, both mostly positive, but sometimes can feel small to students who've been in bigger public school settings. In the classroom specifically, meaning in a class that averages 16, sometimes smaller in the middle or upper school, really not possible for a student just to sit back and be anonymous. Kids at Blake are really expected to be engaged in the learning process. And so they're expected to come to class prepared and be able to participate. That certainly is a transition for some of our students who've come from a public school setting where classes are bigger and that's just not possible. So here's a question, and again, Vicki, maybe you're in best position to answer this as a parent, and Anne, certainly as associate head of school. A parent wants to hear about the in-class experience, specifically at the middle school. Is there a teaching style that is typical for Blake? So maybe I'll throw that to you, Anne, first. Is there a teaching style that you see prevalent among our faculty, or one that's expected among our faculty?
I would start by saying that no two classrooms are exactly alike. And the basic principle that underscores all of our teaching at all three divisions is that we have student-centered classrooms. So that might look different at different times, but a sort of key model would be to imagine students either in small groups working with each other, with the kind of guidance and support of a teacher, or students really sitting around in a circle, having a discussion that is focused on building sort of the skills of critical inquiry and, good sort of liberal arts discourse, building on each other's ideas, asking questions, citing evidence, connecting ideas. Very rarely do you see teachers in the middle school delivering lectures. I would say a general rule of thumb for most of our faculty is that they don't like to talk for more than 5 to 7 minutes at a time when they're setting up a lesson, a lab, an activity. It really is about encouraging students to take agency and control of their own learning, learn how to engage with each other, and kind of interrogate what they need from themselves to move forward with a lesson.
That was an awesome sort of institutional perspective on the classroom experience. I'm curious, so Vicki, when Graham sort of moved from lower school to middle school last year as a sixth grader, how did that go? Was that sort of, moving from class to class with different teachers with different expertise in their discipline? What was that experience like for him?
So one thing I noticed, the tone definitely changes from lower school to middle school. There is a greater expectation put on the middle school kids, which I really appreciated. There's a push for a lot more independence. And I will say, as a parent who has kind of been a fly on the wall since my son has been homeschooled, what I really love about all the teachers is, even though they're probably not thrilled to be at home either teaching, but there's still consistently this excitement among all the teachers. A lot of questions are asked to the students. And that's really how I'm noticing some of these conversations, and the teaching is geared is by getting the kids to open up and talk themselves and lead the discussions.
Right. Thanks.
So don't tell anyone that I've been listening in.
I think we know there are parents in the background. Families heard a couple times from me and from Anne about this idea of Blake's commitment to pluralism, and someone has asked if we can be a little more expansive on that. What does it mean for a school, or what does it mean for Blake to have a commitment to pluralism? So certainly I want Anne to talk about that, and then any of our parents who feel like they've got something to share, that an example of how we demonstrate that sort of day in and day out, I'd love to hear it as well. So Anne, why don't you give that a shot?
Sure. So I would say that our commitment to pluralism is really predicated on the belief that a truly robust learning environment springs from a diverse school community. And for that reason, Blake is deeply committed to not just seeking, but valuing and engaging students and employees and families who have a really wide range of backgrounds and identities and life experiences. And really, once we're together in the community, the question is, how best can we strive for understanding across those differences in an inclusive environment? So how is it that we each pursue our own self-knowledge and self-awareness of how our identities were created? How is it that we learn about the identities and lived experiences of those with whom we share this space and those with whom we do not? And then how is it that we can work to bridge the differences between and among us, and then also leverage the similarities that exist? So sort of on a very broad institutional level, that's how I would describe a commitment to pluralism. And I'm happy to offer specific examples, but I'd love to hear from our panelists just what they've seen and what their experiences have been of that commitment in action.
Yes, I agree. So Vicky, Tasha, Mara, feel free to share if you have something to share.
Sure. Hi. So I think that in kindergarten, they spend a lot of emphasis on Black History Month and Martin Luther King Day. And to the extent that when we took Tabitha to the Science Museum to see the Apollo exhibit, she saw a picture of Dr. King and like shouted it out and was so excited that she knew part of history there. I also think this year in particular, Blake has done a really good job engaging parents in discussions about race in particular. I'm looking at one of the questions in the chat about looking at history from different perspectives and current issues that have been magnified lately. And the Blake School has offered parent book groups before. And then the first one this year was Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so there were a couple of different options for parents to join a book discussion about that. And the Equity Lab also offers a lot of resources for parents and Equity Lab experiences for people to participate in, which I have found incredible, especially since like we live in North Minneapolis, we live in a very diverse neighborhood, and these issues are just on our minds all the time. And so I think that the teachers really do a good job trying to educate from a holistic perspective. And I mean, my child is only in first grade, so there's not a lot of like, critical thinking at history at this point, but so I can't speak to how they teach history in the upper level classes, but I know that she's coming home learning about different historical figures that were not really part of my education. And I think she's getting a much better education in kindergarten and first grade. So I don't know if the parents with older kids want to speak to that.
I can speak to that sort of from the other end at Blake with the junior, that my son's taking a history class right now. And my son tends to be relatively shy, and he's been doing a semester-long project looking at economic disparities in Minnesota. And so one of the things he had to do for this project was he had to get in touch with two different people and interview them, like two different professional people, and interview them about what they understand about, he was dealing with economic disparities in particular. And so he had to reach out to people in the community, and one was what needed to be white, and then one was supposed to be of an underrepresented group. And I actually, because it was all on Zoom, I had the opportunity to listen to him interviewing this woman who is actually very involved in Native American opportunities in Minnesota. And so to listen to him talk to her about what's going on with race, with Black people, with all of this in a very, and also with Native American populations in a very much more facile, much more eloquent way than I could. And just listening to the conversation he was able to have, I was like, holy cow, you've learned a tremendous amount that, obviously we're trying to foster at home, but I think really a lot of this was coming from Blake, and just really proud of hearing what our students are thinking about. And, they're asking the important questions, and, having Blake encourage them. I mean, what a scary thing as a 16-year-old to go out and, email somebody, cold email them, can I discuss this topic with you? And then do a formal interview on it. So.
Thanks, Mara. So we've got about now 9 minutes left, and we are going to end at 5 o'clock. I want to be respectful of our panelists' time and of our parents' time who are joining us. Let me say, I think we've got more questions than we can possibly answer in 9 minutes. I'm going to focus the questions on broader topics about the school and the curriculum. Those of you asking questions that are admission centric, again, we are in great position to answer those individually, either tomorrow or the next day. So we will be in touch with you if you're asking admission-specific questions. So let me ask Anne. So I don't think Anne talked about this in her intro. She served as Blake's head of upper school for how many years, Anne? 5 years?
4 years.
4 years. So certainly deep background on the upper school curriculum and experience. So a question here is about extracurricular opportunities in the upper school, specifically in the arts and theater and music. Can you speak about that?
Absolutely. So just brass tacks, the graduation requirement at Blake is that students take at least 4 semesters of the arts during their time in the upper school. And that encompasses opportunities in the visual and performing arts. So everything from theater classes, advanced acting, to ceramics, to painting and drawing, to advanced design, to computer animation. So a really broad range of electives there for students to choose from. We also have in the upper school a number of theater opportunities, notably a fall play and a spring musical, as well as a number of smaller acting performances for students in our acting classes, some of whom are involved in those productions and some of whom are not. Blake has a really inclusive approach to supporting students who want to participate in theater. We choose productions that allow us to accommodate a significant number of students as actors, and not everybody can always be on stage. That means that we also create crew experiences for students to work on set design, work on lighting, costuming, you name it. And Joe, I'm sorry, remind me, it was theater and music?
Music, that's right.
So we have a number of choral groups, both a cappella and accompanied as part of our curriculum. They have performances formally, both in the fall and the spring at Blake and beyond Blake. There is a band and choir tour for the upper school in a typical school year where they travel throughout the Midwest and perform at various venues. We also have an audition only, 2 audition only a cappella groups, Blakers in Dozen and Blakers Trouble, who perform at Blake events and beyond.
Thanks. And another one for you, I'm afraid. We're so lucky to have you here. So a couple of questions about COVID and Blake's approach this year to school, noting that Blake, I think folks know that we decided just before Thanksgiving to go fully remote for a short period of time. Maybe you could talk about the decision-making process that went into that decision, what we expect to unfold from January and beyond, and most importantly, our level of confidence that we'll be back in what we expect will be a normal school year for 2020-21. That's a lot to ask of you, but certainly a relevant topic.
Separate webinar. I will try to be pithy. So we spent last spring and summer developing a really broad range of mitigation strategies for on-campus learning this fall. That included everything from infrastructural upgrades like bipolar ionization units to hiring COVID response team members to screen all students and employees every morning for health symptoms and temperature, and then clean the campus during the day. We have universal mask wearing and hygiene protocols throughout our divisions. And we also created this hybrid model that allows students in different ways, lower, middle, and upper, to spend their time with a pod or cohort group in order to minimize spread. Throughout the year, we have looked both at Hennepin County case numbers, public health data that's available through the MDH, such as hospitalization rates, and also our own symptom tracking and COVID case counts at Blake. Our 2 school nurses on staff this year communicated individually with every single family whose student was out of school with one symptom to understand what that symptom was and to provide the best guidance for them about returning to campus. Ultimately, we decided in Thanksgiving or in November that we were seeing an increase, not just in Hennepin County case rates, but with a couple of COVID cases on campus. We want to make sure that we have the staff and faculty available to support students in a healthy and safe way while they are on campus. And so it made the best sense for us from a student support perspective, student health and safety perspective, to shift to remote learning. As we think about a return for the lower school on January 4th, we have gone back through all of our protocols and policies. We've revisited everything from lunch policies to recess. And we feel as though we have some new good strategies there. We are also requiring COVID testing for all lower school students and employees prior to a January 4th return. And we're anticipating that our upper and middle school students will return on January 19th, fingers crossed. Again, looking at public data, case counts, and information from the governor. And ultimately, the last comment that I would make is that we feel really fortunate to have the resources to make all of the adjustments that we have, to make the investments that we have, to hire the additional significant faculty and staff to support the model. And it's just another great example, sorry to beat a drum, of what it means to be able to be nimble as an independent school and make decisions that are really best for us and best for our community.
Thank you, Ann. Sounds like COVID is front of mind and the topic of many conversations in your office. The tail end of that question asks us to predict the future, more or less, and what we expect to unfold for the 2021 school year. I'm sorry, the 21-22 school year.
Oh, if anyone has a crystal ball, please send it to me, agraybeal@blakeschool.org. I will give you my mailing address. We feel great, obviously, about the vaccine news that has come out in the last couple of days. We are really optimistic about what that means for us, not just for next year, but also for the considerable number of summer programs that we have in the hopper and that we're keeping our fingers crossed about. We know that our kids learn best when they are in person. And really, we are taking every step we can to have them be in person as long as we feel that we can do so responsibly. Okay,
I want to stop questions now, and out of respect for the fact that we are just a minute away from 5 o'clock, I want to thank our panelists for spending an hour with us. Every time we do this, I learn a little bit more about Blake, so I am grateful, and I'm sure our families did as well. We had more than 60 families in attendance today, so that is just a terrific response. I apologize for not being able to publicly answer all of the questions, but as I noted before, I promise you that we've taken note of them and who asked them, and we will be responding to you personally over the next day or two. My last screen, let me see if I can do this. There we go. Oh, I apologize for that. That's not right. Anyway, there we go. So I want to end by just noting to all families that we encourage you to create your login and get access to the Blake admission portal. That is the one-stop shop for admissions news, signing up for events, starting the application process, scheduling a tour. As noted here, we certainly encourage you. We are doing on-campus tours still and will through the winter and spring. So we encourage you to sign up for tours to see any one of our 3 campuses. The application is ready and available if you want to move ahead. We certainly hope that you do. Our first round application deadline this year is February 15th, so you've got a little bit of time. And we will certainly be hosting more virtual events like this throughout January, February, and into the early spring. So we encourage you to sign up for all that are of interest. Again, thank you to Ann, to Vicki, to Mara, to Tasha for joining us. It's been great to see you. We don't get to see parents that often this year, so great to see your faces. Thank you again to our guests for spending time with us this afternoon. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.